I thought I'd just do a section on the whys of meditation and the different forms it takes. So, for instance, a lot of people will ask, why meditate? What does it do? Well, normal energy use is often a kind of all or nothing principle. So, for example, there's a drive or an urge to do this or that, kind of stimulated from outside. So meditation is an effort to internalize energy and to sense it from within, rather than rely on external promptings and stimuli. For example, the heat or fire or positive charge of meditation comes from the abdomen. The Hara center, which has been covered already. The negative or water element opposing this is the brain. So the chakra system, all the way up the spine, the meridians through the spine, as they ascend, become more and more receptive to this energy. The brain is receptive to the energy of the Hara center, which is at the level of the abdomen. So the aim is to send this energy from the abdomen through the solar plexus and trap or grip this energy at the terminal point of the Vishuddhi in the spine and transfer it to the brain. There is various exercises such as keeping the tongue on the roof of the mouth to establish this link to the brain from the throat. So to summarize, the idea of meditation is to link the positively charged Hara center at the level of the abdomen to the brain through the channels of the spine. So there's an upward ascent. So to maximize pressure and energy in the abdomen, the yogic systems and the Chinese systems, as well as the Japanese systems, have advocated distension or pressure of the abdomen in order to maximize the heat and energy levels there. Now obviously, if it's a less intensive meditation, it might rely on less energy and just more calming, soothing waves circulating the system. That's fine. So depending on the aim, whether it's to generate power and send it to the brain for powerful practices of enlightenment at the highest level, it was necessary to link this generative power of the abdomen to the brain. Whereas for straightforward everyday practice, it's necessary to leave that to one side sometimes and just sit in a comfortable position and let the breathing just circulate like so. So one way of entering into this subject of meditation is to let the breathing dictate the pace. That will depend on the person, obviously. Faster, slower. It all depends. Eventually, just by paying attention to the breathing and sitting in a regular posture, upright as comfortably possible, there can be a certain soothing of the nervous system, which is enough to just recuperate, recover and recharge. It's as simple as that. It doesn't need to be a complicated exercise of exact postures. However, there's a deeper science to it as well. Basically, to go through the key points in order to maximize the energy in this system. The abdomen, according to the inhalation and exhalation, the abdomen is held in a constant state of pressure, inward pressure. It's not the abdomen isn't constricted, because then it doesn't expand. There's a loose and yet constant grip, just the right pressure, like you would grab a sword. You wouldn't squeeze it, because then your fist would get too tired and tense. There's a grip which allows the energy to flow, and this is a key principle in the Hara Center. So during the exhalation, you allow full exhalation, and there's a lift of the abdomen. During inhalation, there's a descension and a sinking of the energy, an expansion of the Hara Center. So inhalation, there's a rise of energy. Excuse me, let me start again. During inhalation, there's an expansion of the abdomen. During exhalation, there's a lift and a lift of the abdomen, a contraction somewhat. Now it's okay to breathe through the mouth. I was just using that to illustrate the kind of sound. But generally, meditation and breathing is done through the nose for maximum benefit. Inhalation, particularly. In order to draw the energy upwards, the throat is contracted somewhat. This draws the energy and eventually locks the energy there, so it's closer to the brain. When it passes through the solar plexus, there's a unity of the negative charge of the brain and the positive charge of the Hara Center. This unity creates a fusion of energy, which it is said in certain systems creates the new man, or the inner birth. Now, depending on which system you look at, they all say the same thing, essentially that meditation is a unity, a fusion of energy, positive and negative, which aims to balance the individual, to bring unity within. So it can be a unity of intense pressure, or just a unity of yin and yang in the sense of relaxation, but an energized relaxation rather than a passive, lazy relaxation. So the inward pressure of, for example, the abdomen dictates or is often dictated by the external pressure. So, for example, if there's an intense feeling of energy or emotion, then there is often a corresponding inner tension, inside tension, in order to stabilize the body, to freeze for that moment. And during that freezing, breathing slows down, but it can be controlled. So what I mean by that is that if a predator is stalking a prey, the prey must remain absolutely still. But the stillness causes a subtle grip on the internal system, which allows oxygen to pass through for exhalation and inhalation, to occur in order to stay alive in that situation. Now, during that experience, I don't know if you've had it yourself, but if you've had to remain extremely quiet for some reason, under tension, then there's a certain gripping of the inner thoracic and abdominal muscles, as well as the chest, in which the breathing must travel through without disruption or too much tension or external release. So that, in a way, is similar to meditation, because you're gripping the internal breathing apparatus around the midsection, such as the neck, the abdomen, and the chest, so that the internal breathing occurs and there's a certain pressure that's sustained. It's not too intensive pressure, because that would just cause internal tightening. It's a loose pressure, just the right pressure for the situation. So obviously desperate measures call for desperate inner measures as well, which is why there's great internal tension under extreme external pressures, which might sometimes... That's how in meditation you can enter the inward kingdom even under extreme external pressure. That's the aim anyway. It's not easy and it's not simple, but it can and has been done, and is an ideal to strive towards. And this is how meditation can be introduced into every element of life, not just sitting still in the exact same postures all the time. Because if you were for example, if you were to be taken prisoner, or something as simple as if you were to stay in a cramped airport overnight, you didn't have anywhere to sit properly, you would have to just do the best you could, because life doesn't present us with ideal situations. Where possible, we can find these situations and allocate some time to silence and meditation. But often situations just don't permit that. That doesn't mean we should stop doing it or stop trying to closely approximate the ideal we're after. So it can be done at any time, not optimally obviously, but that is life. We can't all sit in the mountains and seclude ourselves, nor would we want to. Many of us wouldn't want that. It's always an option for periods of time, but it's all down to the individual. So it's a case of applying these principles as little or as often as time or constraints or interest permits, and that's according to the individual. So there's a certain positive and negative attraction between the brain and abdomen. This fusion occurs at the level of the solar plexus, diaphragm, and this is why we follow the breathing. So if the breathing is slow, steady, and we concentrate on silence and just listening inwardly, then this is the pathway in order to achieve this state. It's ideally this is introduced into all aspects of life at the highest level, into every movement, into every thought. Eventually it starts off, at least, as and remains so for years, and at different points in one's life it starts off at least as an effortful process, by which I mean requiring concentration, an effort. However, the more it becomes habituated and is practiced regularly and routinely and wherever possible, the more it actually becomes an automatic habit to fall into, so that each attempt at meditation becomes easier and easier. In other words, it becomes part of who you are. So normally the system just produces certain chemicals, drives and energies as and when external situations demand. So it's about meditation attempts to introduce a higher purpose for that energy. So for example, the survival imperative is to reproduce and simply work and basically satisfy various survival imperatives. This is because this is a positively charged way of living, which the generative energies around the Hara Center don't make their way up any higher, much less as a matter of course to the brain. So it's about developing not only new tools for survival, but new pathways for energy. And this is the science of yogic breathing and Chinese inner medicine, to develop these new inner pathways, which require us to create them. The imprint is there. There is even an instinctive intelligence which points us in that direction. But it's about developing those capabilities through practice and sustained practice. It can take years, decades. It can be obtained in a moment, just in a flash. In an emergency situation, you can have this total concentration without effort. The trick is, or the key is, to make those moments, to bring them without judgment of being bad, as ways of realizing greater meaning behind action and activity. So for example, to bring that intensity or that inside pressure that we once felt was outside of us. Now pressure is neither bad nor good. It's the way it's handled, interpreted and channeled. So masters of the past have undergone extreme external pressure that they have been able to look into and penetrate, and also come through to the other side, which means they've found the internal meaning behind it and used this stress, this pressure, this suffering as a stimulus in order to channel within and convert, because these things can be, with intelligent direction and practice, these external pressures and stresses can be internalized and made use of. But that all depends on the capabilities of the individual, the developed capabilities. So the advice is to work within your own needs and capabilities rather than towards a perfection you neither want nor desire, and to progress slowly and methodically. These are methods that I'm outlining so that we use the Hara Center, the solar plexus, the Vishuddhi chakra, in order to generate and transmit energy, which is the reason behind martial arts, the intelligent use of energy.